but instead to share like certain principles and certain things that I think that anybody, even if you're not a designer, can use. So I'm going to be sharing my screen because I have a presentation. Oh, 1 second. Okay, please let me know when you can see my screen. I'll just start from the beginning. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so yeah, how to create professional designs with Canva. So first, what is so cool about Canva? It's an easy drag and drop tool that empowers everybody to design. Like I mentioned before, and I'll keep mentioning, I am not a designer, and it has customizable templates for every occasion. So from, I mean, announcing the birth of your child to creating a business card to pretty much everything, anybody can use it. And like I said before, it can be used to design almost anything. Yes, so how to Canva like a pro, I guess, is first, don't just copy a template. Canva is accessible, and like I guess part of the appeal, of course, is its accessibility. And so it means that not just you, like, you're not the only one that has access to it. Everybody in the world has access to it. So if, for instance, you own a business and you just go on Canva, you own a cupcake business and you go on Canva and say cupcake design for Instagram, a bunch of templates will come out. And I mean, you can just slap your logo on it. But what will happen is every other person who is in that line of business can do the same thing. And at the end of the day, all of you have the same designs. And I don't really think what you're trying to do when you're running a business is to blend in with everybody else. Next is to establish a guide for your brand. If like me, of course, like I've been saying, I'm not a designer. So it's not like I'm saying create a huge design system or anything. It's just a simple set of guides for your business or brand that will consist of colors, fonts, elements, images, filters, pretty much everything that you plan to use consistently. And then, of course, obey basic design principles. So they're just certain things that you can apply over and over again, or certain rules that you can apply over and over again to make sure that your designs look good or they look professional, even if you're an amateur. Of course, like the more you look at good design, I feel like the better you become design, and it won't happen all at once. So, something that this class will do or this webinar will do is just share certain principles that you can start practicing immediately, and just see your designs get better over time. Okay, so on Canva, you can create a brand kit, and how to do it, you can't do this with the mobile app, but you can do it with either the web app or the desktop app. There's a desktop app for Canva now, and I'm so excited. And so you just go to home, click on the brand kits, and you'll be able to upload your brand pictures, brand logo, brand fonts. And every single time you have to design, you don't have to remember all of those elements because they'll be stuck with you as you move on. So what I guess we're going to be going through today is like all of the elements that I feel like will help you to stand out. And we're going to be talking about font, color, layout, and images. So yeah, first fonts. There are a lot of different kinds of fonts, but like these are very broad classifications that I feel like everything can fit into. So you have display fonts that are large, more eccentric. So they tend to be used for like headings or banners or things like that. So they're usually what you would see that would catch your eye at first. So if, for instance, you're designing something that says 10% off and the rest of it is like how to get the 10% off, more often than not, what you use for the 10% off is the display fonts, because that's like what catches your eye. And of course, like these kind of fonts are not to be used for extended bodies of text. You're not supposed to write out like a long book of text that people are going to read with a display font, because it will be really difficult to get through. So you use them in like very tiny doses. Something else is a serif font. So serif fonts have these tiny tails around them, if you can see them, and they're like very classic and very elegant sometimes, right? And they work better with books because the tiny feet at the end, if you can see that, sort of guides your eye as you read. So they're good for, sometimes they're good for text, but like I think they work better on things that are printed than on digital. So sans serif fonts, sans is without in French, and it's just fonts that do not have tiny strokes called the serifs. And they tend to work better on long blocks of text. So if you look, like everyone on this page has serif fonts. And if you look at most apps that you use, you will notice that, or most digital products that you use, you will notice that they use serif fonts because they are like very easy on the eye. You can read a long block of text that's written in sans serif because you don't have all the tiny strokes like getting into your eye and all of that. So these are like some simple tricks or basic rules that anybody can follow when pairing fonts. So like I mentioned before, if you are designing, you don't want to write everything in a display font. You want to mix and match a little bit. At the same time, you don't want to write everything in a sans serif font because what it will mean is that not a lot of things might pop out immediately, right? And so how I would usually mix is a serif font with a sans serif font. So I can use a serif font as a heading and then the sans serif font as the body of the text. An example is here where it says simple tricks and you can see the tiny strokes everywhere, but the subtext under is in sans serif font, so it's easy to read. You can also use bold sans serif with light sans serif. And that's what I've used all throughout this presentation, where these bolder ones are sort of like the headings and then the lighter ones are the body of the text. You can also use a display font with serif or sans serif. You can use serif with italicized serif. Yeah, so as a rule of thumb, I always use contrasting fonts rather than similar fonts. And this is important to make sure that certain things stand out. So if you've decided on what you want to stand out in your graphic, you want to use things that contrast, not conflict or anything, but things that contrast so that it's easy on the eye to read. Modern Family is one of my favorite shows, and I noticed their logo like a few days ago for some reason, even though I've been watching it forever. And I thought it was like a really good example of this, where they use a sans serif font for the modern and a serif font that looks sort of like display because it's like so bold for the bottom, and then it just ends up feeling very nice. I like looking at the logo. I don't know why. So yeah, next thing is color. I'm just going to look at the chat because like I might be talking to myself and I want to be sure that everyone can hear me. So if you can hear me, please let me know in the chat and then I'll move on. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm going to go back then. Okay, so the next thing is color. And color, of course, is like a very important part of your design because it's the first thing that people notice. I've probably only been on this slide for a few seconds, but you've already maybe looked here, and looked here because those are colors that are immediately like calling your attention. And so it's important that you choose colors that reflect your brand and what you're trying to achieve. With someone who is, I guess, more like a professional, they can get away with choosing like very random colors. But then if you are new, I feel like it's just easier to pick colors that actually reflect your brand. So for instance, if you own like an organic brand or like a natural brand, you want to go towards like greens and olives and browns and colors like that that just give the vibe of what you're trying to achieve. Like I mentioned before, colors are like a very important part of your brand kit at the beginning. So you want to stick to 1, 2, or 3 colors at most that you're going to use consistently for like specific designs. So I'm not saying like forever, I'm just saying for a specific design. And like if, for instance, you own a business or a brand, this is something that would make sense to you because you're creating things consistently for a specific brand. So to hex codes. Hex codes are used to represent colors on the web in general, as with other things like RGB and all of that. But with Canva, hex codes are used, and it's pretty much a 6-digit code that represents a specific shade or tone of color. And it ranges from white to black and has every color under the sun in it. And so a good example is here. So if I told someone to design something that had a pink background for me, they could do this or this, and in a way they'll be right. And we can go back and forth about what is pink and what is not pink. But I mean, there's no way to specifically say what pink is in my mind and share it with them. But with hex codes, right, they can pick the specific shade, the specific tone of pink. So with this D195C0, if I send this to anybody anywhere else in the world, on any other computer anywhere in the world, they would get this exact shade of pink. And it's the same with every other color as well. And to ensure that you have consistency with all of the colors that you pick. Next is color palettes. And I mean, you can't just go with one color and move on. You probably want like I mentioned earlier, like a group of colors that you can use over and over again with your brand. And like there are different color palettes. They are monochromatic, complementary, analogous, triadic, tetradic, and all of those ones. But like I don't think none of the names or the definitions are particularly important. What is important is the colors that they give you. And all of these usually come from the positions of colors on the color wheel, right? And I mean, if you're very new, like you might not know what colors to use exactly. There are a lot of tools that you can use and just say, oh, okay, let's say I'm stuck on this color and I want this color, but I need a palette that works with this particular color. I can use any of those tools, click on it and say, oh, I want to see what complementary colors would work with it, what analogous colors would work with it. And then you try over and over again until you, I guess, figure out a palette that you want to use. And like you just use it consistently over and over again. This, for instance, is like a color palette that I generated on a tool called Coolers. I have at the end of the entire slide, I have a list of different resources on fonts, colors, photos, pretty much everything that you might need to get started. Okay, yes. So next, I'm going to talk about layouts. And layout is very important because it helps to ensure that everything you're doing is cohesive. So if you have fonts that work and colors that work, but like your graphic is all over the place and there's one element here and one element there. I'm not sure if you guys can see me moving around the screen, but yeah, just in case you can, it's important to have everything put together in a way that works or in a way that is logically consistent, I guess. So for instance, you want to ensure that points are anchored and properly aligned. With word processing, like everybody knows, like with your Microsoft Word or Google Docs, you know that you can align text. So for instance, all of this is aligned to the left. There's also, at the same time, it's also, so it's justified, right? It's aligned to the left and at the right. And you want to make sure that that's how everything is on your designs. If something should be on the left, it should be aligned to the left, and all of the other elements that are also on the left should look like they should be anchored together pretty much. So for instance, I have this here that has my name. If you notice, it's anchored with all of these other things that are on the right. I mean, if you are a professional, you can play around with this a lot more, but like if you're not a designer already, like it's just easier to do certain things that you know that will give you a result that is consistent. So whenever something is on the left, I pick like an anchor here. So it might be like the logo is here, and I just want to make sure that everything that is on the left is on the left. It's not like anchor starts from here, but proximity starts, you know, a little bit. Even if it's like a little off, it tends to just give the entire thing a sense of disarray. And thankfully, you don't have to do any of that by yourself. It's not like you have to manually ensure that everything is arranged properly. Canva has like different layout tools and grid lines to ensure that you can achieve perfect alignment. Something else is the rule of proximity, and that is similar pieces of information should be either grouped together or formatted in a way that is similar. So if you notice, that's what I've been doing throughout the presentation, where the headings are here. All of the subtext and the subheadings and all of them are on this side, and they look very similar. So it's clear what I'm trying to do, where there's something and there are other things that explain it. All of the subheadings look the same way. If, for instance, you received an invitation card, you know that the date, the time, and the venue are usually arranged in the same place. And it's not just for fun, or it's not just out of convention, but it's because that's where your brain your brain associates those three pieces of information together. So it's better to just put them in that one place, not like date is here, time is there, venue is somewhere else, RSVP is somewhere else. So you want to group pieces of information that are similar together. So if you are designing a flyer for like an event, for like a webinar or something, you want to make sure that you put, if you're going to put the date and time here in the center, you want to make sure that they look the same. You probably want to use the same kind of fonts for them and things like that. Something else is to be consistent. You should stick to your guide. If you've created a guide at the beginning, you should stick to it and ensure that you're using the same colors, you're using the same fonts, spacing is consistent all throughout the graphic. I feel like something that a lot of people just do, especially when they're not using template, is to just throw things all over the page without realizing that, I mean, it's not just about elements being everywhere, but it's more about consistency and ensuring that things look like they were intentionally done. Okay, yes. So I mentioned the grids earlier, and on Canva, you don't have like complex grids the way you will have with other other tools for creating graphics, right? So you have this very simple horizontal and vertical grid, and you have this box grid that is on all the types of layouts that you have on Canva. So this ensures that your element is in the middle, or it's in the middle of the page vertically, it's in the middle of the page horizontally. So you can just move the element around until you're sure it's exactly where it should be. Something else is this box grid here. And a rule of thumb is to try to design everything within this space. What it helps to do is that there's like a margin, right, between the edge of each part of the graphic and the actual text and the actual content. And so it gives focus, because the first thing that your eyes look at, right, is the middle of this page. And you want to make sure that as much of the information is captured as possible. With a presentation like this on Canva, I would have had a rectangular grid that would have been like around here. And so what I've done so far is to try and put all of the elements for every single page inside that grid. So that way, none of my elements are too close to the page. If anything is going out of the grid, I can tell that it's like way off and I need to inside. Okay, more on layout rather, is to use contrast. So opposites attract. One way to make your design really stand out is by using opposites, right? Use contrasting but complementary elements to bring focus to important messages in your design. So with all of my presentation pages, you can see that when I have a dark background, I have light text, and that's important to ensure contrast. That ensures that you can actually see the text when it's presented, right? On the pages that have the white backgrounds, you have darker text because there's contrast in between. On the next slide, I'm going to show like other ways that you can use contrast. More on that is encouraging focus. You should keep your design simple to enable readers or users or whoever it is that's consuming it to consume it easily. Be intentional in making sure that the reader is able to keep their eye on one thing at a time. And this is like for people who throw things again all over the place. In that case, it's like really difficult to focus, because when I look at the graphics, like my eyes are pulling all over the page. But like you want to ensure that you're encouraging focus. If you want people to focus on 10% off, like that should be where all of the attention is first. Then to the next place that looks a little less busy, then to the next place, not like everywhere is busy. And of course, embrace spacing. You shouldn't clutter every single inch with text or photos or elements. Some people would put like something here and something there and balloons here and just things all over the place. But it's important to ensure that it's clean. I mean, the space is not, there's no reason, yeah, that's just it. There's no reason to put things, no reason to fill the spaces up. Like you can allow it to just breathe. You can allow all the content to just breathe. Like I mentioned earlier, right, you want to make sure that there are margins on all sides. So you don't want to start your content from the edges of the page. This is something that I feel like we all learned in primary school and secondary school, where even with your notebooks, your teachers will say you should like maybe draw a margin or just leave a margin, or there'll be like an automatic margin where you should not write beyond. That's something that is important to keep in mind when you're designing with Canva, and I guess with anything else as well. So you should embrace the space in between your text, in between your images, in between all of your elements. Just let it breathe. Yeah. Okay. So these are like different examples of how to use contrast. There are like a lot of other examples, but these are some very simple ones to use. Light backgrounds with dark text, dark backgrounds with light text, using fancy fonts with simple fonts, using bold fonts with small fonts. Okay, yeah, so this is what the Canva editor looks like when it is just laid out bare without like a work in progress, right? This is where you pick the fonts from and all of that. But I wanted to focus a little bit more on arranging things and layouts. So these are like some tools you can do to ensure spacing. So there's like a text spacing button there where you can space your text more, increase the line height to make sure that there's space between, like in between sentences and things like that. Then when you click on position, this usually pops up where you can arrange things, you can move things either forward or backward, you can align things like automatically. You don't have to depend on your hands being straight or on your eyesight being straight enough. You can space things evenly. Okay, so an example is with this vertically. One second. Okay, yeah, on this presentation, for instance, I wanted to ensure that the space between here and here and the space between here and here are the same. So instead of trying to struggle to make them to be the same, I just select all of them, make sure like this is grouped with that, and then I just select all of them, and then go to position and click on space evenly vertically. And so there's like automatic space, like it's automatically properly spaced. Sorry, I'm not seeing. Am I going to share my presentation? Yes, yeah, sure, I will share my presentation. Oh, okay. So we're on to images. Also, I'm not sure if I'm being too fast. I can't really tell how like this is going. But yeah, images. So first is, of course, use clear images that reflect your brand. And this is double-edged in my opinion. So you should use clear images and the images should reflect your brand. So for instance, if your has African women, your stock photos should also have African women, right? You shouldn't use white men in a boardroom for any reason at all. You should also make sure that the images are clear because like blurry or pixelated images can break like whatever it is that you're trying to do and just make you look very unserious. At the end of this presentation, like I mentioned, I've also included a list of places where you can get free stock photos from, paid stock photos too, I think. But yeah, let the pictures be sharp. Let it be obvious that you're serious about what you're doing. Don't steal canvas photos. This I'm saying because actually see like you think this is like something that people should just not do, but like people do it a lot and then they have like the Canva watermark inside their design and it just looks very tacky and weird. So yeah, if you're going to use one of the, because Canva has like a repository of free images, but sometimes it's really difficult, especially when you're trying to find pictures of Black people and things like that. And so some of the pictures of Black people are paid, and then you now use it and it has like the Canva watermark. Yeah, we can see the watermark. So don't use it. Like either just pay for it or find another source for free photos. Like I mentioned earlier, there's like a list of places where you can get free photos from at the end of this presentation. Okay, yeah, so use transparency. This is when you need to place text over an image. So you want to make the image more transparent so that it's readable. Again, this goes with what I said about like embracing focus. So if you're going to put a picture of like tall buildings and you want to put text in front of it, it's very possible that we won't be able to see the text properly because there's so much going on. But one thing you can do to balance that out is to use the transparency tool, which again on this menu bar, like I mentioned before. So when you click on transparency, this is also available on mobile, by the way. Like all of these things are available on mobile. I just really like the web and the desktop apps. So click on transparency and you can actually adjust. You can make it more opaque, less opaque. You can just have a field day with what you want to do. So next is to use filters sparingly. If you choose to add filters, like stick to just one and be consistent with it. Let your pictures have a similar vibe. Especially like within the same graphic, right? If you're going to use like a city, I don't know what all of those filters are called, but like you're going to use one that is like city something something, and then you now mix it with this other one that looks like you're in Mexico, and then this other like just pick one filter for all of your images or something, and then just use it in that sense. Okay, yeah. So additional tips would be to use presentations for even more unique templates. Like I mentioned before, anybody can just go on Canva and get a bunch of templates about cupcakes and whatever. But like one way to actually dig and find templates that are really unique is to go to presentations. So you don't have to use the presentation layout, but you'll see like a lot of inspiration. And this is like the designers at Canva have created like all of these templates or whatever. And it's usually maybe like an 11-page document that follows the same design system. And so it's like somebody who's really good at design has thought through the entire thing and you can just like reuse it over and over again. I know like a lot of really good design people who are not even like amateurs like me that use things like that. So like they just resize it into the size of the graphic that they're trying to create. There's like a lot of design gold in the Canva presentations templates tab. So like that's something that you should definitely check out. Play around with Canva backgrounds. And okay, so I wanted to show this where what I did was put a background, like picked a random Canva background, picked like I just picked a random background and picked random text and just changed the text in two different text font styles of two different like font contents and then just wrote that out. So like around Canva background that gives you the opportunity to I guess feel like a pro a little bit more because you have like these presets, really nice looking pictures, and you can just put text on it and that I'm just going to use this to sort of show all of the different things that I mentioned before. Where I used the background, and because I didn't want it to be too busy, I placed the text on a part of the background that's plain. There are margins around where the text starts. This is part of the photo, so it doesn't really matter that it's all the way to the end. There are margins around it, so it's not touching the end. I'm using sans serif font here and serif font here that looks like very different. And yeah, I used the grid lines to ensure that it was like at the edge of the box of the think about like the invisible pink box. It was at the edge of that for this. Yeah, so look at good design for inspiration. I feel like anybody can get better design. Like even if you don't feel like you're a particularly creative person, I don't think that I am creative in this sense, right? But I over time just looking at what people see as good design, over time you begin to know when to like just tweak things and be like, oh, this shouldn't be here, or this should not be there, or just to be a little bit more transparent. This is a bit too busy and things like that. Next thing is of course to practice. You want to try and try and try, like design anything, like think of random things and just design. If there's like an opportunity to design anything for work or anything, maybe not like very serious things, but like a party flyer or something, like volunteer and practice. Ask for feedback, show people, and be like, so one thing I sometimes do is like maybe I design something and then I show somebody and say, when you look at this, what pops at you first? And like I want to make sure that is what I want to pop at them first that's popping at them first, for instance, things like that. So I ask for feedback and then I go back and try again and just try over and over again until I'm satisfied with what I've done. Okay, yes. So I mentioned that I would have like a list of resources, and someone asked me in comments if I was going to share this. I'm definitely going to share this. I'm going to share a link. I'm not sure where, maybe on Twitter or something. I'm going to share a link to this. And it just has like a list of random places that you can go to find fonts that pair properly. So for instance, with fonts, there's font pair, font joy, where you can go to and just find different fonts to match. So you're like, oh, I want to use a Montserrat, for instance. What goes well with Montserrat? And they give you like a list of different fonts and their applications. Or with colors where you can pick one color and then get or generate an entire palette out of it. Yeah, that's that's pretty much all of my presentation. So I didn't know if there would be like time to do a demo thing or not. But yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Please do a demo.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay. Um, 1 second. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so I can. I can hold and I can keep you in mind. Darling, we're longer than love is selfish man. Honest with my baby.
in the meantime, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat so Teju can answer.
Okay. I'm just going to share my screen. 1 second. I'm not showing the right screen. Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to, I guess, just recreate this, which is something that I like to recreate a lot. But yeah, not that one. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to recreate this, and I will start with a blank page on Canva and use the background. And how I usually do that. So sometimes you can go here, which is where all of the different nice backgrounds are, and you can just pick one or whatever. But yeah, the one I want to use is the smoothie one. Okay, I can't find that. So one other way, or actually a tip to use when you can't find a background that you really like or you really want to use, is to do this. So you go to the elements and then you click on grids. Yeah, so grids allow you to pick like different ways that you want pictures to look on the design. So if I want a picture as a background and I can't find it in the backgrounds tab, I usually just click on this. So this, you can move this around, but I want it to cover the entire page. So here, and then I go photos and look for the picture that I want. So I want the smoothie picture. This is nice. Okay, but I like, while I try and find that one, this is like one thing that you can do to create random, like really just random designs in like like one quick thing, I guess, is to move pictures to the background. You rearrange it a little bit so you have space for text, or you can flip it around if you want. You can maybe flip vertical or something, and then just move it around a little bit until you have enough space for text. And you can use one of these ones. You can use one of like their made text, but like there are not a lot of them. So sometimes you want to like just create one yourself and then just add a heading, add subheading. Sorry, 1 second. Let me just lock that so it doesn't move around. Add a heading and a subheading there. Yeah, I'm just going to reduce the fonts for that a bit. Okay. Okay, yeah. And then you add your heading and subheading. You decide like what fonts you want to use. You can reduce the size of this some more, or whatever. 1 second. Yeah, and you can just like design around this, and it will be something that's really simple that will take you like a very short amount of time to finish doing. But like that's like just one way to do things when you don't want to really bother, I guess, about like what's happening anywhere else. You can just use a simple background and then add other elements on top of it. But yeah, I'm going to go back to finding my now because I like that one. I like all the colors in it. Okay, I found it. So I'm just going to move it here, and then now it's like the entirety of the picture. And to add this bit, I'm going to use one of the elements, close the grids and use shapes. So for shapes, I'm going to use a circle and just move it to the end and just arrange that a little bit until I like where it is. Yeah. So I want the color to be, I guess, consistent with like everything else that's happening on this picture. So I will just click here and go here to the pictures or to the colors tab, and Canva automatically picks out colors from the picture for you. So it's like you don't have to stress about it too much, and just pick this one. So now we have like a picture that's a color that's the same as that one. I'm going to reduce the transparency of this. This is like the transparency reduction and increasing I mentioned earlier. I'm going to reduce the transparency of this a little bit more. I'm going to move this around. I'm going to keep moving this around until I really like where it is. At the moment, I don't. So, okay, one. Yeah, then next is to add the text. So you can use one of the preset font combinations like these ones here, or create yours by clicking add a heading and add a subheading. So if we were going to create ours, yeah, I'm just going to move those there. I'm going to change the heading, and how you do that is to come here and look for whatever heading it is that you want to use. So say we want to use open sounds, it will be changed to that, and then you just reduce. You can reduce the font size here. Let's see. You can reduce the font size until you like what the font size looks like. You can do same for this. Okay, and these are like the text alignment tools I mentioned earlier. I'm just going to select both of them together and reduce the size a bit until I'm kind of fine with it. I'm going to still change the fonts because I don't think that they look good together this way. But like I'm just going to move that around until I like what it is. So I use this because I liked the copy on it. So I'm just going to check what it is. This is League's pattern, which is a sans serif font, and Angelo Brewing, which is a serif, and Sanchez rather, which is a serif font. And I'm going to just combine those together here. Sorry, 1 second. I'm just going to search for leaves pattern here. Okay. And the copy says cold, smooth, and tasty. I can increase the font either by dragging this or by just changing it here to, let's say, A48, 64. And if you look at these two, you will notice that there's the line height between this and this. Like this has much higher line heights than this one. So you can change that up by going here and just moving around with that until like you find one that you like or you're comfortable with or whatever. But yeah, I'm just gonna take that out now. And here as well. So I move these together. I want to make sure it's within the box if possible. And so um, yeah, so you can just keep moving things around until you really like how they look or not. Yeah. Okay. So for this, I'm going to use, let me find a different one. Crimson Pro. Let me see what I use. Strawberry smoothie to blow your mind. Okay, let's try that one. I'm also just going to reduce the font for that like quite a bit. I'm a big fan of it. So you can just keep trying things around until you really like how it looks. I'm going to change this to white. Now, just to increase the size of this a little bit, move it back into this, and just keep doing that pretty much until I like the positioning of all of it together, which sometimes can take a while, it can take like a very short time, depending on what's happening. Is there anything? Okay, so in the initial one, I actually had this less transparent, but like you can choose what you want to do if you want it more transparent, if you prefer it this way or you prefer it with less transparency or whatever. And then, oh, I don't think I showed how positioning works here. You can pick, like you can move this backward or move it forward or align it up or down or anything like that. I feel like I've gone through all of the stuff that was on top. But yeah, that's pretty much one thing. I don't know if anybody has a question yet. Am I using the paid version? No, I'm not.
Thank you, Teju. Does anybody else have a question? Are there any questions? Okay, it appears that there are no questions. So that'll be the end. I'm going to
Yeah,
you
yes,
can follow
Edmond.
Teju on Twitter at Teju Adeyinka is her name and her surname. I will share all of the resources in an email.
Yes,